Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. This is Tulio Suragusa, and today is Thursday, November 18th, 2021. We have an interesting show today. We're looking forward to speaking with our guests. I want to welcome my co-hosts, Carlos Ponce from Cuernavaca, Mexico, and Kim Lantis in Hermosillo, Mexico. Hi, guys. Welcome back.
Hey.
Thank you. Good to be here.
This is the last show for this week, but not the least show for this week. We have Rohin Parkar, who's the co-founder and CEO at Spintly, who's our guest today. We're going to talk about automation and smart devices. Welcome to the show, Rohin. Good to see you again.
Hey, Tulio. Nice to be on the show and pleasure seeing you again.
Yes. So before we get into the topic today and dig in and see what we can learn and unpack everything that we can, let's get to know you a little bit. If you don't mind, please introducing yourself. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about Spintly right after that. Thank you so much.
Sure. Carlos and Kim, nice to meet you as well. I'm Rohin Parkar, co-founder and CEO of Spintly. Started Spintly in 2017 back in India. Prior to starting the company, I used to work in the US. Spent about 12 years in the US, starting working in Chicago, moved down to Dallas, and then moved to California. Primarily worked in the wireless technology space. Before moving to US, I studied in India. I grew up in India. I did my engineering. I started my career as a scientist working at Baba Atomic Research Center in India. That's where I got into wireless technology space and kept moving forward, learning wireless technology as a core area of focus. About my personal life, I have a wife. I have two kids. Kids were born in the US, then they moved back to India. Now they're schooling there, and I come back to US right now for business. So life keeps taking you in circles. You keep moving around the world. So.
All right. Well, great to have you. Tell us a little bit about Spintly. What is the business all about? What gave birth to this idea? Why do you guys do what you do?
Yeah. So me and my co-founder Malcolm D'Souza, we both been friends since childhood. We studied in first grade together, did engineering together. We always used to talk that we want to start something at some point of time, but it never happened. Eventually, when I moved back to India, he was also in the US. He moved back to India, and then eventually we said that let's take a plunge and start something. Right? So we started a company which would just do something in the wireless space. We were not sure what it could be. And then when we were doing some projects, trying to do some automation, we ended up in a building automation room in a building, and we happened to see a huge number of controllers which were there in the room. They were occupying a huge amount of space. There's so much of cabling and wiring which is going on. And so we started understanding building automation. And we realized that the whole building automation business is based on a central controller-based architecture, which is really bulky. And we thought that we could use our knowledge of wireless technology to change the way things are done in building automation. So that was our aha moment in that room, in the building automation room. And that's when we decided to build this company. Yeah.
Just to quickly understand, the way it's traditionally done, you need a construction company that runs the wires. Everything is hardwired, right? Whereas your technology uses wireless technology, so you don't have to do all that construction work to get it going. All right, let's see what we can unpack today's show. Kim, is it you who's introducing the topic, or Carlos? Carlos, please introduce that. Well, Carlos introduced it yesterday because you had a problem with your internet. Yeah. So it's up to you guys.
Kim, go ahead, please.
Right should we
Feast
rock,
away.
paper, scissors?
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors. Kim.
Yes. So today's topic, as chosen by Rohin, is wireless mesh, future of building automation. And basically, how smart wireless devices can transform the built, or I'm guessing the actual physical world in which we live.
Are we losing Kim?
Oops, I think we're having problems again with Kim's internet.
Steam-powered internet. Okay.
We're talking about the future of building automation, how smart wireless devices can transform the built world. So tell us a little bit about what prompted this topic for you. Why is it relevant today? You gave us a little bit of hint earlier. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
So if you look at home automation, it's already pretty getting popular in everybody's home, where you're putting devices in homes, right? Like you're using something like a door open sensor, which is wireless nowadays. It used to be wired forever. But the buildings, if you go to a commercial building, you would see devices which are used in the building, like say smoke detectors. There are temperature sensors which are there in every room. All these are wired, right? When you look at commercial buildings, it's a huge amount of cost and labor which is going into laying down the system, and a huge amount of hardware which eventually is going to go into recycling, right? All the material at some point of time. So hi Kim, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, Kim.
So we thought that, I mean, we are moving towards a sustainable world where we need to build stuff which doesn't waste things, right? Which wouldn't go waste. So the world is moving towards something which is really minimalistic. You don't need bulky hardware. I mean, in fact, we should be able to harvest energy from the air and have devices which are just self-powered. I think that's the direction which we are going, and we are trying to build a platform which will allow us to get there.
That's very
Rohin,
Nikolai Tesla. That was his concept, right? Grab the energy from the magnetic waves in the air. Go ahead, Carlos.
yes, Rohin. Okay, tell me something from the layman's perspective. I'm the show's official layman, just so you know, right? That's why I'm asking the question from that angle. From the layman's perspective, would you say that what you're proposing here, the wireless mesh, the future building automation, are there any convergences with the IoT space?
Yes, this is purely an IoT platform, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where these are things which are connected to the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are a few ways you could connect a thing to the internet. You just put Wi-Fi into it and it gets connected. But that's
Mm-hmm.
not efficient. It doesn't scale. So you need something, and Wi-Fi takes a lot of power. So you need to form a mesh network of devices in the building, right? And that's how they would eventually connect to a gateway and that would connect to the internet.
Right.
Eventually we are seeing that technologies like 5G or will come in, and low power devices will be directly connecting to the tower, right? So this is purely IoT.
Okay. So where does radio frequencies jump into the equation here? Are there all convergences with radio frequencies,
all these
devices?
devices So all these devices are having wireless communication, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
uses certain frequency, right? In this case, it is using say 2.4 gigahertz. We use
Mm-hmm.
Bluetooth mesh technology. It used 2.4 gigahertz. We are moving
Mm-hmm.
towards a protocol called Thread protocol. All our devices will support Thread going forward. Again, running on 2.4 gigahertz. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where radio frequency is coming into picture. So every device will have a radio.
Mm-hmm. And I am assuming that there's also going to be a big component in security matters, right? How to protect the information, the data that's being either generated or received. How do you go about that, making sure that everyone's happy and at ease?
Absolutely. So security becomes a major concern. So when it comes to IoT, because there are hackers always trying to get into your network. So we use standard technologies. So encryptions, these use encryption, 128-bit encryption when the data is transmitted from one node to another node. So nobody can just sniff the data and understand what's going on. It's fully encrypted. And the standards like Thread or Bluetooth mesh are the ones which allow us to do that.
Great, thank you. Well, I got many more, but I'm going to let my fellow teammates. Guys, do you have any questions for Rohin?
Oh yeah, just to kind of paint the picture a little bit of where we've come from and where we are right now, what makes this possible. The form factor just years ago was like a non-starter for this, right? The chipsets, the type of hardware that would make this possible was just too big, and not to mention very costly. In the radio technology advancements that have been made are pretty significant, Broadcom and Qualcomm, etc. So is that what makes this possible today? These advancements in not only the size and also the ability for connectivity, and then longer term, what role is like 5G enabled IoT devices? Is that going to be a disruptor again in this space?
Yes. So if you go historically, right, processing power was really expensive. So the companies built stuff what made sense, say 20 years back, 30 years back, where they built controllers and they connected devices to it. The problem is now they have a huge install base. So moving to something wireless in an entire building is a challenge. The only way to make it work is somehow develop interoperability between what you're doing now, like wireless and the wired world, right? And that is what the standards do. The major thing which is driving this growth is the technology development in various fields. Like it's a battery technology where you're able to make smaller batteries which can last longer. So you can make sensors which can now be small enough, right, and run for longer. Low battery consumption communication technologies like Bluetooth Low Energy or Thread, which don't take too much power. They just take a little power. So you can put a small coin cell battery which can last for say 5 years, and your hardware is just sitting there. You don't have to worry about it, right? As far as 5G is concerned, so cellular technology usually takes a lot of power, right? Because the tower is really far away, it's somewhere on the hill, or it's not close by. But with 5G, 5G is more of a distributed network. It uses something called as MIMO. So what that lets you do is you can actually then talk to a base station, which is probably very close to you somewhere in the building, and so probably that will allow sensors to directly talk to cell towers. So you would not need a gateway eventually in the building. So I think that would be the eventual disruption in the industry.
Well, that's an
Great.
interesting one. You're basically saying that each device will be its own gateway. I mean, tiny little device. That's going to be
Yes,
a game
that's
changer for
that's that's
a lot. Go
that
ahead, Kim.
seems like the future. It's not today, but probably maybe a decade later, or maybe faster. Who knows?
Amazing.
Kim.
Actually, we may have touched on this when I went MIA for those few seconds, but could we please back up to the beginning and could you explain to me exactly what is meant by wireless mesh? I mean, is this what I'm visualizing in my head when I hear this is this idea of having, like you're just saying, like sensors distributed throughout a building or a physical space that are essentially taking the place of cables, right? So rather than, you know, whatever this is, frequencies traveling along cables, they're traveling from device to device to device. Am I completely off base, or what is a wireless mesh?
Okay, yeah, great question. Let me just explain that with an example, right? You've probably been in a fire drill where your HR or IT head or security head tells you it's a fire drill. So start the this sensor, what do you call that? The fire hooters start making a noise, and everybody walks out, right? So in a real fire, what happens? There is a smoke detector. It detects smoke, and when it detects it, it sends that data to a central controller in the building, and it decides that, okay, there is fire, I need to unlock all the doors. So that controller tells the access controller, again located in the building automation room, that unlock all the doors. And then all the doors are unlocked with wires running to the doors. So that is the current way. In a mesh network, what will happen is the smoke detector will directly tell the doors, hey, I see fire, just open. And this data will go through a mesh network of smoke detectors in the building, right? Because there are smoke detectors all across the building. They can just
Mm-hmm.
relay data to all the doors and tell them to unlock. So it's a distributed architecture. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
It does. But now I'm coming back to my next question. Carlos, I think, at least the way I understood it earlier in the show, alluded to safety or security rather. Um,
Right.
and I understood that to be more of like an information security, privacy security. Well, let's talk about like the physical security, or maybe perhaps that the safety is the right word. Are there risks of completely going wireless? Should buildings also have physical backup? I mean, what does the future look like? Is it going to be, I mean, obviously right now it's a hybrid, but eventually does the physical nature of the world around us start to disappear?
Um, See, it's going to be a gradual move. So you'll have a hybrid model for quite some time, right? Until the until we start building that trust. It's like, are you comfortable in the self-driving Tesla? Today, probably not, right? Probably you're still scared. But there are people who are probably doing it, like they're just sitting and looking at their smartphone, not worried about. But probably 5 years down the line, it may be a normal thing to do. You would not worry about it. It would just be a normal thing. So I think it will eventually happen that a building will be wireless, but it's a gradual move as the
Mhm.
industry builds confidence, security wise, reliability wise. It just becomes a norm.
And what would be that balance between confidence and trust of the masses, but also needing to back ourselves up with the knowledge, that safety knowledge of what happens if there's a system failure? Because as it stands, right, a lot of us, and myself included, like I'm not very good with my hands or like an engineering factor. And I think I've alluded to this on the show before. I mean, if it comes down to this, zombie apocalypse, I'm probably the first one to, to not make it, right? So is there a need culturally to also make sure that we're continuously educating humanity on the tech around us and not just blindly trusting in whoever or whatever is managing it?
This will be driven by the industry itself. So Google, Amazon, Apple, and they are getting into this, and it's for a reason, right? Everything is moving into the cloud. These devices are just collecting data, and data is going to be the thing. Right? You learn from the data. So it's going to be a movement driven by the industry. Again, on the security side, it's Honeywell or Johnson Controls, right? They are part of this group. So it takes about 5 to 10 years to standardize something and start rolling it out. So once the big guys get into it, it's just inevitable that it's going to be a reality.
Yeah, it makes me think
Bro,
of like the airlines. They replaced the cockpit manuals with iPads a few years ago. Once they became very reliable, and to your point, once the technology's proven itself and it's reliable and it has fail safes built in, then I guess that's when the adoption happens. But if someone fails to recharge the batteries, that's there's sensors and alerts for that today, which probably will help mitigate that. But you still need human interaction, i.e., you got to go plug in the thing or replace the batteries every 5 years. Go ahead, Carlos. You had a follow up question.
yes, exactly. Thank you, Tulio. Okay, Rohin. Again, following the layman path, here's something that I personally experienced and recently, and I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were. Let me set the context. The other day, a few days ago, I bought a new printer. The printer, it's I'm not gonna say the brand, but it's just a wireless printer, right? So as I was setting it up, I set it up and I tested it and I ran a couple of tests, print tests, and everything was working fine. I could scan, I could print, everything was wonderful, right? So I was very happy. And suddenly something happened that that I don't know where or why, but there was some sort of misconfiguration at some point that got me stuck. Like I was not able to do anything again. And I was like, how do I fix this? So it led me into getting onto the company's website and troubleshoot the whole thing. I mean, eventually I ended up fixing it or finding a solution for it. But the bottom line is this. I was relieved, to be honest, when I looked at on the back of the printer and I found a place where you can plug an actual
Yes.
wire,
Yeah, a
right?
port.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cord, and I thought, okay, worst case scenario, I can just plug it back in. Why am I saying this? Because even though I realize the advantages and the miracles and how easy wireless technology could make our lives, but then there's this concern about something going on even worldwide to an extent that we could all be frozen, just like I was for a couple of days, right? So wireless technology, what sorts of measures are being taken towards at least keeping a balance of reliance on not having to rely at all times on just wireless, to an extent that they're even gonna remove any possibility, any plugs, any holes, any switches, anything that will allow us to at least have a plan B. How is this being looked into?
So I think Tulio also pointed it out, right, with the iPad example, that it's just about time, right? Reliability comes in. So Apple has been removing connectors left and right from their products
Mm-hmm.
every release, right? And people talk about it for a year and they just get used to it eventually, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
I would argue though that that's probably not technology based so much as it is pocketbook based. You want that port? Pay for it.
Yeah.
so many,
Well, I mean, it's convenience in both. I mean, you have to prove the technology. Like, for example, smart meters. A lot of homes, most homes have smart meter. The electrical companies rely on them to figure out how much to bill you. So their business relies on these things that are not necessarily, hardwired back to the network. They're working through a wireless connection. So everything. I mean, we've had so much advancements over the years that the reliability factor is not even a factor anymore. I'm more concerned about the size. I have these really small sensors on my door, and they're all connected to my Alexa, which I put them in last year, and the battery's still 100%. So you have these advancements that allow not to worry about it. And if the battery gets low enough, I get an alert on an app. So everything is interconnected. So ultimately, I want to get back to the topic. Businesses would want to do this. Why? There's a cost factor of having to hardwire everything, which is huge. There's a space factor, needing a big place, a closet to put this controller in place. And then there's the maintenance associated with that, right? And also reconfiguration, giving rights, etc. When everything is physical, you have to physically do this. That doesn't necessarily allow you to connect remotely. So what's the benefit for businesses, and which businesses are really benefiting from this? The large companies have big budgets. The smaller companies don't. Is this the best opportunity for the smaller companies to leverage this technology, making it more affordable, more accessible? What's the thinking there?
You pretty much nailed it, Tulio, about the benefits, right? So this technology makes access control, first of all, or building automation affordable for small businesses who would not have even thought about putting access control systems into the buildings, right? Because it's so expensive, and they have this concept of AMC, annual maintenance contracts, because the hardware is so bulky, and if something goes wrong, which does in a wired system, somebody has to come and figure out what's going on. Some wire is eaten by a mice, or some connections are loose, whatever, right? So this makes it easily adoptable by small businesses. But in the long term, it is basically, when you coming up with a new project, it cuts down the cost by almost 70%. Because just look at laying down a cable from a front door, into a building automation room, which probably is, say, 100 meters somewhere in the basement of the building, right? Just running a cable is a huge amount of effort, starting from the planning. So the architect will have to plan the conduit. The conduit is to be planned. Then the construction workers have to lay down the conduits. Then the electrical person has to pass a wire through the conduit. And then once all the wires are there, need to put labels on it, figure out which wire is which. So you can just imagine the amount of complexity which can just be removed, right?
Well, and when you put it that way, I also see not just economic advantages, but ecological ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
Less material, less manufacturing, less waste.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Copper's expensive, not easily, it's not using natural resources.
The way we simply put
Right.
it is, when you can send data wirelessly, why do you lay down wires, right? I mean, that's as simple as it is.
Right. Now,
No, it makes a lot of
this
sense.
begs the question about, the radio frequencies have existed since the beginning of time. We didn't invent them. We just learned how to tap into them with the technology that we have out there. But can it get to a point where there's just so much noise that you start having cross signal issues? How do you avoid that? I mean, that's a serious concern. with more and more wireless, are people, crosswire was a physical thing. Now it's more like a virtual thing, right? Could that happen? And what are companies doing to avoid that?
Yeah, so that basically brings us to standardizations, right? So whoever is into the business have to become a part of a standard. So Thread, for example, I said, right? Thread is a standards body. It is a wireless communication standard for IoT. Eventually, we will end up with just one standard, wireless standard being there in the building, so that you don't have conflict between different wireless technologies trying to coexist. So once there is standardization, there won't be interference, right? It is all handled in the technology itself. Right now, you would say that, okay, there is Wi-Fi, there is Bluetooth, and there is Z-Wave, there is Zigbee. And if you put all these technologies in the building, chances are that they will interfere, right? So that's where standardization comes into picture. Like we as a company, we are part of the standardization bodies. We participate in those discussions, and we track what's going on, and then we build our products to be a part of the standard, right? So they can interoperate without interference.
Nice. Okay, so you've got a product. Let's just quickly recap. You've got a product that enables small businesses or large businesses, pretty much any business, to provide more secured access to their buildings' doorways or whatever they need to secure through a wireless type of installation. So it's quick, it's fast, it's easy to manage and maintain on an ongoing basis. The technology allows that to happen. Advancements in battery, advancements in radio frequency, and the size of the equipment makes all that possible. Let's talk a little bit about the company itself. Like, what kind of people come work there? I mean, is it electrical engineers, software engineers, a combination of both? Because you're talking about embedded devices that have both hardware and software combined, which makes it a little more complicated in terms of building things out. So what kind of culture have you created that, and what kind of people end up coming to work for you?
Yeah, it's an exciting question because as an engineer, I've always been fascinated about building products. So the kind of engineers who come into our company are from all the way from hardware design, because we have to build hardware, then firmware development. Firmware is something which is key for any wireless product. That's where the intelligence lies. That's where the IP lies. Then we have software engineers or cloud engineers who build software on the cloud. And we have mobile developers, Android and iOS app developers. Right. So all these technologies make the magic happen. Like you can open doors with smartphones. You can set up devices with smartphones. So that's an interaction between a mobile app, the cloud, and the device, right? So we have software engineers, hardware engineers, even mechanical engineers work with in our company who design the products itself. Supply chain who manage supply procurement of hardware. So yeah, pretty much a fully integrated company which we have built. Really happy with our team, how they have shaped up. Most of the team is in India who develop the products.
Very good.
Excellent.
I know. Well, it's been great to have you guys. Have any additional questions? I feel like we just run out of time. Any additional questions before we go?
One more question before we hit up
Please.
next week's shows. If you could describe the working environment, the culture of Spintly, and let's just say one sentence, what would that be?
Oh,
Leave it to Kim to ask the tough questions.
yeah.
You can use more than one sentence if you want.
So we have a fun culture. Since me and Malcolm both are friends, we started working. We built the company, so we were the first two employees, right? So it was a lot of fun. When friends work together, it's fun, it's fight, and that's the culture we have. Where most of the early members, they fight with each other, discuss with each other. I mean, I don't know if you've been to India. India has more of a rigid culture when it comes to corporate world, like. And I lived in Bay Area. I lived in US. And Malcolm lived here as well. So we developed an open culture, and I don't know if you know, in India mostly people call their boss or sir, right? So that's the culture. If you work with Indian companies, they always refer to as sir. So we made a conscious effort to tell all our employees nobody calls anybody sir, just by the name. So it's a very open culture which we have, a fun culture.
I like that. Fun
Nice.
and fight.
Nice.
Pushback dialogue. I love it.
The truth is that older school culture just doesn't work anymore. People don't want to be part of it, even in countries that are getting away with it, like India, for example. The newer generation just won't stand for that. So kudos to you for adopting not only something that's good for business, but it's good for people. So thanks for being with us, Rohin. It's been a pleasure. We have to keep tabs on your progress. This is a very hot space. We wish you a lot of success. Carlos, what do we got coming up next week? We got the recap show. What do we got coming up next week?
Well, on Monday we have the recap, as you know, at the same time, in which we recap the previous week's shows in 10 minutes. 10 minutes and no more. And then on Tuesday, well, we only have 2 shows because we're having Thanksgiving, as you know. So we have Tuesday and Wednesday only. Tuesday, we'll be speaking with Obi Fernandez, the founder and CEO of Let the Music Play. It's for short LTMP, and which is digital distribution for music creators, digital distribution platform for music creators. That's on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, we are going to be speaking with Benji Koltai, the co-founder and CEO of Galley. And the topic is going to be recipes, the center of the food system. Why food data? Food data is the key to unlocking efficiency and sustainability in the food system. That's what we have right here on Dojo Live at 12 p.m. Pacific as usual. So remember, everyone, join us at 12 at that time, and have fun, enjoy life, and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice talking to you guys.